right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to us younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem Rakakwadash, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah. All right, and what I want to get into with this lesson this morning, is dealing with, family doesn't understand, and that's something that as we, first come into the truth, we come in with this zeal, okay, and we want everybody, to experience, what we experience, which is coming into the light, coming into understanding, because coming into the truth is like a relief, and then it just makes so much sense. That's how there's a spirit, that's dealing, when we begin to hear this word, because it just, everything clicks, it makes sense, certain voids of understanding that, will feel, by this word, okay, and it's just a great feeling, and, us being Jake, compassionate by nature, we want to go and tell everyone. The first people we usually come across is the family, and then it's kind of a disappointment and a shock to see the reaction. It's like it's so real. Like, how can you not believe this? You go to your family with this good news, with your 2.5 precepts that okay, trying to tell them what it is, all right, and then the reaction is like, damn, how could you not believe this? But it's not for everybody. As we mature, we understand, that it's a higher power, the same power that opened us up to the truth, is the same power that's keeping them from getting it, and that's what we come into, the realization as we mature in this thing, okay, and it's not for everybody, and we become balanced with how we deal, with the fam, how much, because at the end of the day, it's, as we get closer and closer to the end, all right, Yahweh Shai is separating us more and more, and you still got certain, relationships with the family, of course, whether it be your extended family, people outside your house, and even within the house, man, the truth, was meant to cause division, which we're going to get into that, okay, because the 1/3 is being, all right, separated from the 2/3. Now, when you go into the book of Mark, chapter 3, and verse 20, I'm going to read this in the NLT. It says, one time, Yahweh Shai entered a house, and the crowds began to gather again. Soon he and his disciples couldn't even find time to eat, because the book of Mark, it gives you, it shows you the fame that Yahweh Shai had amongst, this region, amongst his people. Now, it all wasn't, a lot of people that was coming, it wasn't authentic. They just wanted to, see what they heard, not because they believed, but at the end of it, it was always, crowds around Yahweh Shai, and that's why he would always dip out. He'll teach, do some miracles, and he'll get out of there. Okay? It said in verse 21, it says, when his family heard what was happening, they tried to take him away. He's out of his mind, they said. Yeah, so, his family, because, your family, they know you from, your childhood up. Okay, so to them, you're always going to be, who you were. They'll never see you as a prophet. Okay, your father, your mother, your cousins, aunties, they won't see you as a prophet. Okay, you'll always be their nephew, cousin, son. Okay, nothing more. You see? So as they see us going through these changes for this truth, man, a lot of our people, because and it's worse than, and every situation is different. Some is worse than others, but there's a time when we the talk of the family because of what we believe, and the conversations mainly this nigga is tripping, okay? When they say you join the cult, okay, that's the the main accusation is what he's in the cult, she's in the cult. Okay, he don't eat, the pork chop anymore. He don't celebrate this. This is a cult. Okay? When we begin to follow Yahweh Bashim Al Shah, when we begin to follow, because we're rehearsed, in this society, rehearsing the righteous acts makes you an outcast. Okay, that's why even Yahweh Shah said, or the scriptures say, which, Yahweh Shah, the volume of the book, but when you go into the scriptures, Isaiah 59 and 15, it said, yeah, truth faileth, and he that departed from evil maketh himself a prey. And the Lord saw it, and it displeased him that there was no judgment. Okay? Because there's no righteous judgment in the earth, man. And the Lord is displeased at that, because here it is when his people turn to serve him, they become an outcast in this society. That's why, our family, they look at us a certain way because the way we've been cultivated, in the West, because we've been westernized, and the truth requires us to turn from westernization. You see, and this is the only culture our people know. You see? So when we turn away from that, it's strange unto them, but because it's not meant for them to get it. You see, and we learn we don't have to, be, we don't have to have this intense animosity with them. We just know what it is now. See, as we learn what it is, it's just what it is. Because at the end of the day, we're not going to be around them as much anyway because we got this purpose, especially brothers that's teaching. We're not around like that anyway because we occupied in our office, man. So we're not, we be out of pocket most of the time anyway, But there's still, certain relationships you're able to deal, tap in a little bit. But we know, okay, that we have a priority that's higher than our earthly family. Okay? We've been called into something greater than our earthly family. You see? And they'll never come to that understanding. You see? Only the remnant is going to understand it. That's why the Lord has the remnant, the hopeful elect around each other more and more as we come into these times. Okay? And you read this in the NLT, it says, Isaiah 59 and 15 says, yeah, truth is gone, and anyone who renounces evil is attacked. The Lord looked and was displeased to find that there was no justice, man. So as we begin to renounce evil, that's strange to this world, strange to our family, and then that division can even be in your household, man. You see? When you go to Matthew chapter 10 and verse 34, it says, think not that I'm come to send peace on the earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. Okay? Because we know this doctrine, this word is lead to the ultimate destruction. All right? Which is, the nuclear destruction along with Yahweh Shah and the chariots. And they even liken the lasers and fire coming out of the chariot into a sword. Okay? And some precepts, man. You see? But before the destruction, we know this word is likened unto a sword. Okay? And what does a sword do? It divides and cuts into pieces. You see? And with this sword, Yahweh Shai is cutting out an elect from the rest of the nation. Separating them from the rest of the nation, man. Through this word. It said, for I'm come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Okay, so it's going to be divisions on every level. You see? And what separates us from our earthly family is this doctrine, our belief. So as we're following Yahweh Shai, Okay, well, it creates a separation by default. Okay, because this world is going into destruction. Yahushua is leading to salvation. It's two different paths. So it's going to be what? A natural separation. Okay? Verse 36, it says, and a man's foes shall be they of his own household. Okay? So you have situations to where, certain husband and wife are separated by this truth, man. Whether the husband is a believer and the wife not, the wife a believer and the husband not. I'm not saying that you put away, your woman, okay? And the woman leave her husband if they're unbelieving. If they're pleased to dwell, you deal. But there's going to be there's going to be a barrier, It's going to be a separation in the spirit. Okay? And either the Lord's going to cause the other to believe, you see, or he's going to make that separate. He's going to make a permanent, change in that situation. But it's all in the Lord's timing, and there's some, there's some brothers and sisters fight, that's in that situation. Okay? Which we done lessons on that. All right? Because that's a whole nother, topic. But verse 37 says, he that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Yeah, so Yahushua set a standard. If you don't prioritize me above your father and mother, above your children, above your wife, you're not worthy of me. Okay? Now, either they're going to get in line with it or they're going to be offended. You see? But that's not our problem. We got, orders, you see, to serve Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua. See, we've been called to a higher purpose than them. Okay? Our duties to Yahushua comes above our duties to our earthly family, man. You see, and we still handle our obligations, but see, they have to take a back seat now. And this is the main thing now. Okay? And they look different for every brother, because every brother in different circumstances. Okay? But one thing that's universal is Yahushua becomes a priority. Okay? And they can never understand, our calling. As men of the Lord, nobody outside of us can understand our calling and the duty and the purpose, man. You see? Nobody's going to understand this, so we just got to keep doing what got to be done. Let the dead bury the dead. Let whoever going to be offended. They going to be all right. Okay? We got to keep doing what got to be done. They don't see the full picture. Because the scripture say no one can learn this song save the 144,000. Those are men. Okay? So even people in our household, they're not going to get the full picture. They don't get it. That's why we gotta be the consistent. Okay? We gotta be the one that's consistent in serving Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua according to our office, man. Okay? But the family not going to understand. There's different levels to it. Because there's certain families that's going to say be delivered. Man, woman, and children. Man, women, and children. You see? And even within that dynamic, the man has a calling, okay, that they not going to understand. You see? They begin to understand their role. The woman can begin to understand her role in this thing, but they're not going to understand, our role, the role of men. They're not going to understand that. Okay? They're not built to, they're not meant to. You see? The woman, she just meant to follow. Okay? As we follow Yahushua, they're meant to follow us, man. Okay? They follow behind us, man, not beside us, man. Okay? Because they're not equal, okay, in the understanding that the Lord has given us to fulfill our office, man. You see? So, when you go from there. Let's get this in Jeremiah. Jeremiah 31:10. It says, hear the word. No, it's like Jeremiah 3. Jeremiah chapter 3 and verse 14. It says, turn, O backsliding children, said the Lord, if I am married unto you, I will take you one of a city and two of a family, and will bring you to Zion. So it said one of a city and two of a family. Okay, so the elect is being extrapolated out of the rest of the nation. You know? Because I know for the longest, man, you had, I know that brother in South Carolina, that beloved, Elder Manata Zagba, he was the only one teaching for a while. You know? Then you had the brother Yawan, that came with him, and now he got another brother out there. I know that brother Amawan Bai, he was out there for a while. The brother out there in Hawaii, he was out there by himself for a while. One of a city, man. Two of a family. You got certain, actual brothers that's in the truth. You got two brothers. I know, or you got different camps. You got certain camps that got two brothers, two cousins in the truth. You see? But they've been extrapolated from, a whole family unit. You see? Just those two men were extrapolated. Certain of you sisters, man, you probably the only one in your family, the only one of your unit, might be you and the cousin, you and the sister, certain, women that are sisters that come into this thing as two of a family, man. And not to say it's limited to that, but that's just the format. The Lord don't get whole families, okay? All the cousins, all the aunties, all the uncles. He don't, no, he gets his elect, he extrapolates them out of the mix to that, okay? To join the spiritual family for a higher calling, okay? And this is what being in the spirit. You see, that's why Yahushua said, when you go here to the book of Matthew, chapter 12. All right, Matthew 12 and it's Matthew 12 and 46. Okay, so this is Matthew 12 and 46. It said, while he yet talked to the people, behold, his mother and his brethren stood without, desiring to speak with him. Then one said unto him, behold, thy mother and thy brethren stand without, desiring to speak with thee. So here it is, Yahushua's teaching. Because he was speaking to the crowd. But see, they thought, because of their, relation to Yahushua, that they had some type of authority and rank. Okay, they had some type of exclusive access to him. Okay, because of their relationship, because they was his kin. You see? And then it shows you that they looked at what he was doing is not that important. Okay, because your family think it's not a big deal for you to miss camp and go to, your auntie birthday party. Okay? You see? Not saying that you can't show up to nothing, but this comes first. You're not going to miss camp to go to, okay, your auntie birthday party. You see? If it was on another day and you was free and you cool. You don't celebrate birthdays, but even, you go around your people because there's a balance to it. Ain't going to, be just radical. No, you got balance. Some of your people still cool, they don't believe it's cool, y'all can be cordial. They have a little something you can go and kick it every now and then. It's just not going to be like it was. It'll never be like it was, man. Okay? It'll never, and you're not going to be as available, especially the brothers that's teaching. We're not going to be available like that, man. So you know, I know my family, they might get 10 no's before they get, you know, one yes, man. They might get 10, 15 no's before they get one yes. Just based off, you know, a responsibility, the responsibilities we have now. It's not just trying to curb them just cause. It's just, hey, tapped in. Then prophecy off the chain right now, so it's for sure. See, we tapped in, you know. So, but it just shows you that you know, they didn't look at Yahweh Shai and what he did. They didn't look at it as that important. Okay, you know, his mother brought his you know, his siblings out. You know the goddamn woman, man. You see, Yahweh Shai teaching salvation, the kingdom. You see, and Jake pull up to Yahweh Shai. Your mama wants you. You know, Jake, man. Yeah, your mama wants you. You see, because in the nigga culture, your mama wants you. You supposed to drop every goddamn thing. Okay, you can be putting a motor in the car. You know, you holding the transmission, or you putting in the transmission. Niggas say your mama wants you. You just supposed to drop the transmission and go see what mama want. You know, that's this culture, this society, man. You see, this is Matthew 12 and 48. It says, but he answered and said unto him that told him, who is my mother and who is my brethren? And he stretched forth his hand towards his disciples and said, behold, my mother and my brethren. For whosoever shall do the will of my Father which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother. Yeah, so we have a higher calling. We have a higher family now. We have a spiritual family. Okay? We have a responsibility to our spiritual family. Okay? That even goes beyond our earthly family, man. You see? And this is what we've been called into our earthly family that's strange. You see? That's a strange thing unto them. And they'll never be able to understand it. And we're not here to make them understand it, man. Okay? We're here to serve, you know, Yahweh Bashim Al-Shah according to our office, man. Okay? And everything else going to play out how the Lord wants to play out. You know? So that's the point. You know, just want to bring that out, Lord will. You know, you brothers. All right. And you few sisters edified once again. I want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders, GMS, who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessings, salutations to the whole elect. Shalom.